Hello everyone. In the previous lecture, we saw the rasa doshas mentioned by Mammaṭa. In this class, we are going to see the pada doshas listed by Mammaṭa in his Kāvyaprakāśa. According to Mammaṭa, there are 15 pada doshas. These pada doshas include Shrutikashta, Chuta Samskriti, Aprayukta, Asamartha, Nihatartha, Anuchitartha, Nirarthaka, Avachaka, Ashlila, Sannigdha, Apratita, Gramya, Nayartha, Klishta, Avimirshta Vidheyamsha, Viruddhamadikrit, Samasagata and Shrutikashta. Let's take a look at these doshas in detail. The first pada dosha mentioned by Mammaṭa is Shrutikashta. Shrutikashta is the employment of words whose sounds are harsh and hence unmelodious to the ear. The next dosha is Chuta Samskriti. What is Chuta Samskriti? Chuta Samskriti is the use of a word against grammatical correctness. The third dosha is Aprayukta. Aprayukta, according to Mammaṭa, is the use of a word that, though correct and formal, fails to be in the poetic convention. According to Mammaṭa, Aprayukta is the employment of a word which is correct and formal but not accepted by the poets into the poetic usage. Now the fourth dosha. It is called Asamartha. Asamartha is the use of a word in such a way that the word is not able to denote the idea the poet is trying to make it denote. It is an attempt to make a word denote an idea which it is incapable of denoting because that word is not conventionally associated with that meaning. For example, if I use the word cat to denote the idea bat, I will be committing the dosha which Mammaṭa calls Asamartha. The next pada dosha is Nihatartha. Nihatartha is the use of a word to denote an idea which is not properly associated with it. In other words, it is the use of a word to denote an obsolete meaning which was at some point associated with that word. The sixth dosha is Anuchitartha or improper signification. The dosha called Anuchitartha occurs when the poet uses a word that does not suit the context and befit the characters presented. The following is an example of the dosha called Anuchitartha. The glorious men who have become beasts offered in the sacrifice quickly attain that condition which is attained by the ascetics by prolonged austerities and which is eagerly sought after by performers of sacrifice. Here, the meaning of the sentence is that those heroes who lose their lives in the battle attain heaven more quickly than others. This has been figuratively expressed by means of the sentence, men who are killed in the battle attain the heaven like the beasts that are offered in sacrifice. Here, the comparison is drawn between the beasts and the warriors to suggest the idea that both reach the heaven quickly without doing great penance and taking a lot of efforts. But according to Mammaṭa, it is improper to compare the beasts and the great warriors. So, comparing the heroes of the war to beasts is not appropriate at all. The next dosha is called Nirarthaka. It is the use of redundant particles just to conform to the rules set by the metrical pattern. The eighth dosha is called Avachaka. It is the dosha caused by the use of words that are not expressive. The following is an example of this dosha. To him whose anger is never futile and who is ever able to destroy his own troubles, people surrender themselves of their own accord. On the other hand, if one is devoid of resentment, men do not mind his enmity, nor do they care for his friendship if he is not generous or jantu. In this context, the word jantu, which actually means animal, is used in the sense of not generous. Here, the word jantu does not express the idea not generous, although the poet has used the word in that sense in this context. Here, the word fails to denote the meaning intended by the poet. Now, he moves on to the next dosha called ashlila or obscenity. According to Mammaṭa, an indecorous or ashlila word is of three kinds: a word that implies indecency, a word that denotes disgust, and a word that denotes inauspiciousness. Since we have already seen this variety, I do not intend to elaborate on it again. The next dosha, that is the 10th dosha, is sannigdha or ambiguity. If a word creates ambiguity by generating two meanings due to equivocation, then it is said to have the defect called sannigdha. After sannigdha, the next dosha that Mammaṭa talks about is apratita. The word apratita means unintelligible. According to Mammaṭa, the dosha called apratita arises when the poets use words that are employed primarily in the Shastras. The dosha called gramya arises when the poets uses a vulgar or colloquial expression commonly used by the lumpen public. It is important to note that Mammaṭa is asking the poets to strike a balance between two extremes. In other words, one should use words which are not too formal or too colloquial. The next dosha that Mammaṭa explains is neyartha. If the meaning of a word has to be guessed by the reader due to the lack of clarity, then the word is said to have the poetic defect called neyartha. We should note that here this is different from sannigdha, because in sannigdha the reader is confused about the two equally valid meanings in the context. But when it comes to neyartha, the meaning itself is not clear. Klishta is the next poetic defect related to the word. This padadosha arises due to the obscurity generated by a word. The 15th padadosha mentioned by Mammaṭa is avimrishta vidheyamsha. This defect occurs when the predicative factor of a compound is not sufficiently discriminated. That is to say, in this compound, the predicative factor of the compound is not sufficiently emphasized as the principal factor. The penultimate dosha is viruddham adhikrit. What is viruddham adhikrit? Viruddham adhikrit is a repugnant suggestion. Here goes an example for this dosha. What shall I say of him who is a disinterested friend, his conduct being as pure as the rays of the moon? Here, the sense meant to be conveyed by the word akaryamitra is that he is friendly without any selfish motive, a disinterested friend, whereas the word has also got another repugnant signification, that is, he is a mitra or a companion in a karya, that is, evil deeds. The last dosha is samasagada shrudikashta. It is compounding of words in an unmelodious manner. Having seen all the pada doshas, it is time to call it a day. Soon, in the next class, we will see the vakya doshas and artha doshas listed by Mammaṭa. Thank you.